Colonization happens to be the worst thing that the Europeans ever did to Africa. Why were we colonized? Why didn't they just leave us to grow on our own? Like the Chinese, like the Russians, like the Japanese, like the Koreans. Why was Africa colonized? By the name of colonization, they created problem in the most blessed continent. The continent with the most natural resources. In fact, the richest continent by distance. But they came with their colonialism and they created troubles here and there. What instrument didn't they come with? They came with education, they came with religion. They created borders among Africa to further divide and separate the people. As big as Europe as a continent, there are no borders. Why do we have borders in Africa? The European that created the borders in Africa didn't create a single border in Europe. We have one Europe, but we have a divided Africa. Just because they planned their evil against Africa far in advance. And today, here the Africans are at the middle of the hardship, of the problems as a result of such colonization. First and foremost, why were African? Why is African being designed by the British, by the West, by the French? What happened to our ancestors? See, there are so many unanswered questions about the great Africa, my continent. Where were they? How? See, I've heard this stupid word from some people that civilization begins in Africa or started from Africa. And I ask myself, how? Where was the civilization? And who in Africa was civilized? To the extent that we are being colonized. Okay, being colonized wasn't just that bad, but they stunted our growth by all means. Even the America today that is claiming world power, we are also colonized by the Britain. But you agree with me that as we speak now, America has overgrown Britain. Like a child that have overgrown their parents. What happens to Africa? Why is the case of Africa different? Is it the weapon they used against us? They colonized Africa and they made Nigeria the giant of it. What did they do to that same Nigeria? They forcefully coexisted people that were not supposed to be one as one. Yes, now, if you look at the Nigeria today as an entity, Nigeria is not a nation that's supposed to be one. I'm sorry to say, but that is the sad reality. There is no other country on earth that is as multilinguistic as Nigeria. The religion, so multi. See, Nigeria has become a country where the Islam and Christianity constantly engaging in wars of battles of supremacy in one country. The Fulani Muslim believes they own Nigeria. The Christian says for where? This has been a disagreement all along. Is it the tribes? They destroyed Nigeria to the extent that without the borrowed and colonized language called English, Nigeria have no common language. Every other country does. If you go to Benin, there is a language every Beninois understand. If you go to Togo, outside French, they have a language they all understand. So does Ghana. But come to Nigeria, the Yoruba man, the typical Yoruba man cannot communicate with the typical Igbo man unless they bring in the colonial master's language, English. The Urhobo man cannot communicate with the Kano State man unless they bring in the language called English. So the Britain has done this damage in advance, and the damage is severe. Today, we now have Africans who are beginning to get civilized, who are beginning to say, okay, something terribly wrong has been done to us. Let's try and see how we can fix our continent. Perhaps say how we can make a retrace to some of our steps of the past, where we can rebuild. And by the attempt of this, any African who stood out to be a light is also being taken down by these Westerners. Why? Muammar Gaddafi is obviously one of the first and greatest of those people. There are a whole lot. And who led the movement to take down Gaddafi? An African in the person of Barack Obama. So many people have gone down by this West, bringing them down because they don't want Africa to have the light. And now we are now in the era where we are blessed again with the person of Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. What is it again? The Americans, the French, the Arabs, they are all after him. And at this time, they are using another African America in the name of General Michael Ledley or Brandley I don't know what his name is. I don't care to know. Why would they always use Africans against Africans? This division got that bad that they can easily turn the African man against the African man just because of the division, the border they have earlier created. They made Africa understand that Africa is not one. Because if Africa was one, Africa will have one language, one currency. I think this was what Muammar Gaddafi wanted to do that made them came for him as quicker as they did. Now we have Traore on that route again. They don't want it to happen. The African man and woman is up to you. For how long will this slavery continue? They claim to have given us independence, but they never really allowed us to be independent. They should stop putting up the light that it tends to shine through the continent of Africa. If only Africa can go back and do away with everything that the slave master brought. First of all, we'll start from their language. We don't need the English language. The Japanese don't need the Japanese don't need the English language to be okay. The Chinese don't need it. The Russia don't need it. Why would Africa need an English language to be intelligent, to be proven human? We must look at this. The borders in Africa need to go away. In fact, they have to be taken away. Africa should be one. Then the currency. In fact, there's a whole lot that Africa needs, and we must start thinking towards that direction. Anytime they try to shut down our light, let's unite and fight against these forces of darkness. I know America has so far established themselves over the world like they own the world. That is why many refer to them as the terrorist nation of the world. And at this point, I'm forced to agree. Why would Africa have military base in places that is not America? I mean, United States of America. Why would you have military bases in places that is not your territory? What are you planning? You are trying to surround the people in advance so that the day they try to wake up and revolt, you don't need to travel a distance to strike them. This is evil. This is barbaric. And the so-called world power, the so-called United Nations, the European Union, the African Union, they are all agents and organs of this same evil plaguing Africa. I think the African man and woman are the only Messiah that can rescue themselves. You have the best continent, the most blessed continent by natural resources. Nature gifted us all of that. And for that, it has attracted enmity. They have seen Africa as a farm where they keep harvesting and never want Africans to enjoy the pursuit of their own land. Are we supposed to let this continue? I leave that question for you, African child. See you in my next video. Thank you.